Now, the Russia-Ukraine conflict took center stage at an ANC dialogue in Johannesburg today. The gathering set to probe South Africa's non-aligned stance on the 16-month-old feud. Members of the National Executive Committee say Pretoria's position is not only based on national interests, but global peace and interests of the African continent. For more on what took place at the dialogue, I'm joined now by Newzroom Afrika's reporter, Ziniko Mhlaba, who was there live for us. Ziniko, good to have you. Thank you very much for coming on tonight. What does the SG of the ANC say is the reason for this dialogue? I mean, if they are intent on their position of being non-aligned, they've gone to Ukraine, they've gone to Russia, they are saying they will go back again there, and they are continuing to maintain that position. Why hold this dialogue? Who are they trying to convince?
I mean, that was the question we had as members of the media, because I spoke to Clayton Mnyela earlier on in the afternoon before the gathering started. I probed him on that stance, whether South Africa is open to being moved, is open to being convinced otherwise. He seemed very convinced that South Africa is very clear on its position. Actually said that the position now has upgraded to active anti-alliance, meaning that they are not just neutral on the matter, but they're actively working on finding solutions. So that's what he meant. So by that, he was alluding to the fact that South Africa's position is well informed. It's been well thought out, and therefore there's no need for South Africans then to even question whether this was the right decision or not. However, what was more interesting though was the group that was there attending that dialogue. It was very diverse, I must say. We must applaud them for that, because we had people from all sides of the coin. Got people who were pro-Russia, people who were pro-Ukraine, and they pulled no punches. They went for each other vocally and honestly, and it was very, very interesting. Whether then the ANC is going to take those consideration and maybe try to convince itself or be open to more convincing, we'll wait and see for that.
And that grouping, of course, included the Russian ambassador, who I believe you got a bite of. What did he have to say?
So the Russian ambassador, Thabo, was firstly, his first point that inspired the debate or got the debate heated was that South Africa cannot be neutral. South Africa has to take a stand. He was saying that there is no space for being neutral in this particular fight. That's what he said. So let's take a listen on what he said and then hear what he said.
It is absolutely clear that most of the population in both Russia and Ukraine didn't want this war. It was a necessity. I think that our president made it very clear, speaking on numerous occasions, that we were compelled to do this by NATO expansion since 1991, when the fundamental promise not to expand NATO to the east was made. And then in 5 waves, NATO did expand to the east, and then the 6th, well, it's difficult to call it a wave, but then Finland decided to join NATO. That was a 6th time NATO expanded to the east.
Now, also present there in that grouping was Lindiwe Zulu, who is part of the International Relations Committee in the ANC. Of course, she's Minister of Social Development in the country. But we've seen her articulate South Africa's position on an international relations framework within the ANC. What did she have to say today?
So Lindiwe, firstly, when she took her role was to give us and the people in the room background on where this was started and how long has the ANC as a political party has been engaging on geopolitics. What was she basically debating or emphasizing was that the ANC has been looking out for any possible geopolitical changes globally, and that ANC has been having conversations about how it should take, how it should approach all the international wars, saying that they've been engaging on this matter before even the Ukraine and Russia war took place. She went further to say that, well, from their perspective, their downfall might have been they delayed and were not robust enough, they were not fast enough in making decisions and taking position, by saying that the ANC has always been, very active in terms of being the voice of reason and expressing its voice on global politics. And then she said, referring referring to the peace mission, which was led by President Ramaphosa and other African states, saying that that was not President Ramaphosa's decision that was taken overnight. It was a well thought out. There was a lot of work that was put in before the actual peace mission took place, saying that they had to go to different countries on the continent to try to gather support, to try to convince some leaders. And then eventually African leaders decided that, you know what, guys, we understand, we hear you, let's go for it. However, during that conversation, there were also some revelations that came out from Gracie Munyele, who said that there's so much that we don't know about that mission and how it came about, basically saying that on record that there were actually some deliberate moves that were put in place to sabotage the mission itself. He was saying that on the eve of that particular mission, he got a call from someone from Europe saying that, guys, we understand that this thing is no longer happening. What's happening? So he had to quell that and emphasize that actually this mission is going ahead, whether there are any dissenting voices or people opposing to it. So she was basically saying that South Africa has consulted, South Africa has the support, and South Africa actually is not just looking out for its for its interest, but also the interest of the continent, saying that food issues affect the African continent, but also what the ANC is trying to do globally is to make sure that there's peace and stability globally. We can listen to what she said.
President Cyril Ramaphosa didn't wake up one morning and decide he's just going to call these African leaders and then they are going to get into an aeroplane and go to Russia. There was a long process, and the diplomats will tell you of the lengthy processes, the discussions that happened, and as to whether the meeting must start in Russia or the meeting must start in Ukraine. But the first and most important thing that they had to grapple with was, can we get the two presidents of the two countries to agree to meeting with the leaders of the African continent?
So it's not just leaders of the continent that, of course, are part of this conversation. It's also leaders of Europe who are also part of this, and other countries, including Norway, that was represented there. What did the ambassador to Norway say?
So, obviously, conversation started very slowly. And then the panelists, which involved academics, people from different embassies in the region, which is SADC, but also the African continent. But also, the ANC did allude that they had also invited Ukraine embassy, but unfortunately, they could not join the dialogue, but also invited China. But also, China also was not able to join the conversation. Norway was there, and it was given a platform to express itself. What sparked the debate, what got very heated, though, were the utterances made by the Norway ambassador, who stood up and said, we understand that, guys, we're having this conversation, but actually, let's be frank about it. This is not a debate about two equal partners. There's a perpetrator and there's a victim, saying that Ukraine in this particular war is the victim. It's Russia that invaded Ukraine. It's Russia that actually started the attacks. And therefore saying that South Africa and the African continent must really consider its position, because this is not a matter of equal partners battling out on equal grounds. They are saying that actually Ukraine is the victim. And that was not it. That was not the end of it. He went further because people, the people who were in attendance, they were given an opportunity to probe questions, to ask questions to the ambassador. So they said, okay, but you are saying that you are calling for peace, but on the other side, you are feeding Ukraine with weapons. So where do you actually stand on this matter? Because you are also then taking sides. And then he could not really give us answers. He could not give the people on the panel answers. He went there, but he defended his position that as much as we're saying we want peace, but at the same time, there's a country that is in need of support. And in this case, it's Ukraine. And then we'll support Ukraine in whatever form we can, whether it's weapons, whether it's food, in whatever capacity, we will support Ukraine. And that's when things then didn't make sense for the panel, because saying we don't get where you really stand. Because at the same time, Africa and South Africa are saying that we're calling for peace. We're not supporting anyone with anything, because we want these guys to sit on the table and talk. Yeah. You are saying you want peace, but you're taking one side, and weaponizing
and continuing to arm the other side.
Yeah,
and
that's the
promote
question.
the war. Interesting. Let's watch what he had to say.
There is only one aggressor, but Ukraine has the right to self-defense. Norway, we will support Ukraine with weapons, humanitarian aid, development aid, reconstruction aid, as long as Ukraine think they need it. And our support is in line with the UN Charter, because you can help countries that are victims of pure aggression.
Right, Ziniko Mhlaba, it sounds like a conversation that is still to continue. I mean, after this, are there more dialogues that they're planning to hold?
So the ANC is saying that it's going to have more dialogues with different, under different themes and under different topics. Remember that the first one was UJ, but it was focused on electricity and energy crisis in South Africa. Yeah. So this one was based on the Ukraine and Russia war. So the next one might be different, might be a different subject altogether.
Ziniko Mhlaba, appreciate your time. Thanks so much for coming on. That's our Newzroom Afrika reporter who was live for us there at that dialogue that took place earlier on today.